Start my recording and start my sharing. There we go. All right, so as I said, welcome. This is the first of 4 new charter applicant trainings. Let's see. Use somebody else's station, so my screens are not comfortable to me. Anyway, our agenda, like I said, we're going to go over welcome, introductions. We're going to introduce the Charter Schools Division team. Then each of you will introduce yourselves. We'll go over today the timeline, the training schedule, the process, a little bit of Charter Schools 101, go over the application packet and the rubric, talk about the performance frameworks, facilities, and research. So again, I just want to welcome you all. The application process, the startup process, it is rigorous. It's intentionally rigorous. We're intentionally not as helpful as we are to schools once they are approved to enter into their implementation year. We're looking for, well, the commission, the Public Education Commission authorizers are looking for highly functional teams that can take on this very large task of opening a public school and running a public school in the state of New Mexico. So again, we're going to start with some introductions. And so the director, who you'll hear from in a moment, is Karina Chavez. Then there's myself, Missy Brown. I'm the Charter Schools Division's Technical Assistance and Training Supervisor. I have Ted Farnath with me, who's the Technical Assistance and Training Administrator, and Nicola Davis, who is the coordinator. And so I'm going to stop sharing so that Karina can introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. I see a few familiar faces and lots of new faces. So welcome to the first training that the Charter Schools Division provides for individuals who've submitted the notice of intent in accordance with the requirements in law. There was at least one attempt to submit a notice of intent that did not notify the district in which the school would be located. So that school or those founders will not be able to submit an application, but you all met the first cut of submitting your notice to both the PEC and the local district. And we don't assume that means that you've made a decision on who your authorizer will be. You have a choice up until June 1st, but you probably might want to make that decision sooner, because if you went with a local district, they might have a different application kit. What Missy and team will be providing from here on out is completely aligned with what's in statute, but it also is aligned with what PEC expects. So I just want you to have that in your head as we're going through this process. It is a very rigorous process. I've worked in charter schools for 20 years. I used to work with a couple of people that I see on this webinar a long time ago at the PED, and authorizing has really evolved as a way of working with charter applicants in existing schools. And the bar is high. It should be high, because it is a tremendous, tremendous lift to go from a really great idea to a really great plan. And then once you've got the charter approved to open up the school. So I want to wish everybody the best of luck moving forward from here on out, and to just, and I know that this will be covered in the training, but just to remind us why we have charter schools, right? We don't have charter schools because somebody wants a different job than the one they have in a district. We don't have charter schools just because it's a great idea. We have charter schools to honor this bargain of accountability in exchange for some levels of flexibilities and to really meet the needs in the community. So if I leave no other message with you all today, it would be that charter schools should be meeting the needs of the kids and the families in the community in which you're seeking to open up a charter. And this is something that to do that well means that you are engaging with the community and potential families that will attend your school. We're looking for different and innovative teaching methods. We're looking for some research base, but we also are looking at effective practices and diverse characteristics of your schools. And again, I didn't say anything about myself except that as the director of the Charter Schools Division, I'm going to be working very closely with Missy Brown and those that will review your application and will make a recommendation to the PEC if you choose to submit through the PEC. If you submit through the district, then we will just be talking to the district to see how it went. Thank you, and best of luck moving forward.
Thank you, Director Chavez. I will go back to sharing. And so now I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves, your name, your any of your team that's here. I'm looking forward to hearing how some of you pronounce your prospective school names, where you plan to be located, a brief description, and why you think your planned school is really needed in your community. I'd love to hear that. And so I do have some prepared slides, and they go mostly in alphabetical order of the school. So we will start with the school.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Radi Abul Hassan. Basically, there is an issue with the way my name is written. It's not supposed to have that many vowels. It's supposed to be just B-O-L, but it's just a misspelling in the past. Yeah.
Well, I'll fix it I'll fix it. And I'm
no,
sorry.
I mean, like, no, I don't mean this was on your side. I mean, that was on my own side, you know, like in the initially when it was written, the password, basically. So the location, the name of the school is Andalusia, which is Andalus, which is Spain, Portugal, the historical Spain and Portugal, basically. And the school is meant to be a high school offering grades 9 through 12. As you can see on the slide, the proposed enrollment is 400, but we're hoping to get more than that. By the way, I am Radi Abul Hassan. I'm not Ahmed Hassan. Ahmed Hassan is not here. He has meetings at the school where he's basically the principal. So basically, I have work. Oh, by the way, I work right now as a resource teacher in Albuquerque High School. I worked with, I'm certified ELA and ELD, and I'm working on my endorsement in math and science, just, you know, because I know how to do them. I worked with immigrant families for almost 5 years now, in Albuquerque High at Van Buren Middle School. It's kind of interesting. I work like with students in middle school and then when they went to high school. So the proposed structure of the school is basically to bring the history and the culture of New Mexico to the educational sphere. So basically to empower students to investigate their histories, the histories of their families, speaking specifically of the Moors the Moors influence in New Mexico. I don't know if many of you know that the word adobe, the adobe building is an Arabic word actually. It comes from atub. And that's because much of the structure and the architecture of the buildings that we have in New Mexico is influenced by how things were in Spain and Portugal, the historical Moorish Andalusia. So basically, the proposed curriculum will be, students will be working on thematic projects where they will be working on architectural designs of both in New Mexico and where they came from, like the areas that influence the architecture in New Mexico, such as Spain and North Africa. In the process, the students will be doing their math, they're doing their physics, all science, history, social studies, literature in that sphere. So the thematic units will be based on these topics, basically. We'll have an influence, we'll have a deep influence, focus on math and science and all STEAM, basically. I don't know if you want me to talk that much, or I can give more details later on, but I think
Yeah, that's fine.
enough.
It just a nice introduction, everybody. Thank you so much, Roddy. I appreciate it. All right, next, Collins Lake Outdoor School.
Excuse me. Good morning. My name is Steve Smaby. I've got Kaya along with me, and then Becky Kappas from Highlands was also helping us with this application. We're up in Mora, New Mexico. I've created a nonprofit out here about 11 years ago to support adults with autism and other developmental disabilities. Over the years, we've built campground facilities. We've done a lot of different things. And then during COVID is when we first kind of got into education. We opened up our campground to all the local students, or any of the local students that wanted to come out here and do their remote learning. And when they were done with that, then they got to go out and play on the lake, go up in the mountains, work with the animals. And from that experience, we really saw getting kids outdoors made such a difference. The kids that we dealt with were primarily kids that were struggling in school. And when you got them outside and gave them some freedom and took the walls away, things changed so much. Since COVID, we went through the fires, the wildfire up here. We've also, and as part of that, we've started an environmental program, environmental education in conjunction with Highlands, again, for local students to come out to the ranch, spend some time out here. We've obviously got a strong affinity for kids with special needs on the spectrum and otherwise. And what we really saw was that as the public schools in the area are struggling, the special needs students are struggling even greater. And so that's kind of where we looked at and said that there's really a need that's not being met. So we are going to focus on outdoor education, and inclusive. Ideally, we'd probably want about half special needs kids, half regular ed, and getting kids outdoors and giving them an alternative. We're not going to be for everybody, but I think that the other thing that in Mora, we currently have probably out of their 400 to 500 students, I think close to 100 of them now are homeschooled. Those students come out here occasionally to do some of their programming, and honestly, we're probably going to get 100 applicants right from there. We've also looking at nearby areas, particularly in special needs. We've got the same issues down in Vegas, Taos, Penasco. We think that we're going to be attracting students from those areas too. That's kind of it in a nutshell. Kaya is my outdoor education director. We hope to continue programs outside of the charter school for other students, and she's leading that effort. And then we've got a number of other board members from the Autism Center that are helping us with this process. Becky is at Highlands, and Mary and Doug Eric have kind of generously donated her to help us through this process. So if Becky or Kaya, if you want to throw a little something else in there, I'm not sure how much more detail you want. That's in a nutshell.
No, that's perfect. I'm happy to see Becky, my former coworker, so it's nice to see you again. Although I used to go by Melissa when you were here last, now I'm Missy. All right, so next we have the Las Cruces International School STEAM. Who would like to?
Hi, good morning, everybody. We are located down in Las Cruces, New Mexico. It has some wonderful weather out here. My name is Julia Rivera Tapia. I am currently the assistant principal at J. Paul Taylor Academy. And with me, I have
I'm Jessica Castro Buelna, and I am currently a kindergarten teacher. So we're giving it back over.
So our dream, our idea that we're working on is to open up a K through 5th school. It's going to be a bilingual school that focuses on STEAM education. Our proposed enrollment is of 240, and our mission is centered around rigor, excellence, and we hope to cultivate some globally minded scholars here in Las Cruces. We are a border town, and the possibility to become bilingual students and to have all the sciences integrated, not just as a class, but as a way of learning all day long is doable. So we're hoping to get that started.
Thank you. Next we have thinking Le Pilier Montessori. I don't know how you want to pronounce that.
Hi, yes. Good morning, everyone. My name is Julie Ann Hale. So our proposed school is Le Pilier Montessori School. Le Pilier is a French word. It means the pillar. And we are proposing pre-K to 3rd grade with projected, enrollment of 200. Our mission is inspired by Dr. Maria Montessori. Our mission is to strive empowering children to explore and discover knowledge independently. So we will offer art, music, culture, religion, science, math, and language, fostering intellectual development, creativity, and strong sense of curiosity. So our proposed location, we would like to serve students in the east side of Albuquerque. And my educational background is in special education. I've been a special ed for 16 years with 3 years in elementary. I came here as a special ed teacher under H-1B visa program. I started in Española and then also taught in Santa Fe. And currently, I started a job placement agency in bringing international teachers across the US in the J-1 visa and H-1B visa program. So I'm currently a program coordinator of that job placement agency. But I'm partnering with Clarissa Garcia. She runs a Montessori school in the Philippines, 3 Montessori schools in the Philippines. She's actually in the Philippines right now. It's like 12:20 a.m. in there. And I'll have Clarissa introduce herself as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Clarissa Garcia. I ran a Montessori school here in the Philippines for 45 years already. So we started with just 70 and reached up to 850 students. And we will be, it's our process, it's learning by doing. So the students will be working a lot with materials. It's concrete materials. When we teach the lessons or the subject, we have the concrete materials that they use. So they can easily assimilate it, not only in the mind, but with the hands, with the use of the hands. Yeah, we have 5 areas of learning. We have the practical life, and then sensorial materials, the language, and mathematics and geometry, and cultural arts, which covers botany, zoology, history, geography, and science. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for staying up so late. All right, so next we have Llano Estacado Charter School.
Good morning, everybody. Llano Estacado will be located in the Clovis-Portales area and encompass K through 6. This is an idea that actually came about in 2020 when my grandchildren were attending school down in the Portales-Clovis area. And we just realized that there was a need. There was a huge need for it in that area for a unique school to meet all students' needs, no matter what end of the spectrum they're at. My son couldn't be here today, and so I have a little over 30 years experience in education in New Mexico. I actually retired from New Mexico and then came back as a superintendent. So we decided this year was a good year. You know, 2020 obviously wasn't a good year for a lot of reasons, but we decided this was our year to try and get this up and off the ground. And so we're both super excited about this adventure.
Thank you so much, Shannon. All right, so next we have an applicant team that is not in the training today. Numair Latif is proposing the RES or RES Academy. And another submitter who isn't here to introduce themselves, Angela Feathers, is proposing both Enchanted Valley Montessori in Espanola and Sundance Montessori in Santa Fe. So maybe we'll get to meet them at a future session. All right, so moving on. We have the training schedule, application process, and timeline I want to go over with you all. All of the trainings are presented on Monday mornings from 9 to noon. They will be recorded. We have a YouTube channel. Well, the Public Education Commission has a YouTube channel. I will post the videos on the PEC's YouTube channel probably the day after, because it takes a little bit of time to process. The sessions won't necessarily take the full 3 hours. Some of them will depend on how many questions you all have for us. At our February 12th meeting, we will be hearing from I forgot to put on my slide, sorry. We'll be hearing from Public Charter Schools of New Mexico about the CSP grant for new charter applicants. We'll also be talking about budgeting, facilities, and your organizational framework. In March, we'll do a deeper dive into parts B and C of the application. And then in April, we will be talking about the application submission, the peer review process, Epicenter, which is a new electronic platform that we have for all of our processes and applications and reviews. You know, at least the Public Education Commission processes and next steps.
Missy, sorry to interrupt. Quick question on
don't ever hesitate to interrupt me. I just want to say that. So go ahead, Jessica.
On the previous slide, you had that the next meeting is on February 12th.
That's not true. It's February 24th. So
24th.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out.
Cool deal. Thank you.
I'll fix this, and I will send you guys the PowerPoint, and I will fix that. But I was just looking at that today. I mean, this morning. It's February, what, like 24th? It's February 24th. So it's kind of a rough timeline. You all had to submit your notices of intent by January 10th to both the Public Education Department and the district in which you intend to be located. Today's the first training. The next big hurdle is going to be April 17th. you will have to submit your facilities master plan exercise to the Public Schools Facility Authority. And then June 1st is when the application is due, no later than 5 p.m. On June 1st. And then the technical review period, capacity interviews, and analysis of your written applications start on June 2nd and wrap up by the end of June. This is a complicated and heavy lift. And so there are people who have been through this process more than once. So there's never any shame in going through the process more than once in order to have the best possible application. So keep that in mind. Then once we hit July, if you're applying with the state, the Public Education Commission, they will hold their public community input hearings the week of July 7th. Those will be held in your proposed communities, giving your community easier access to speak in favor or against your potential charter school. By July 15th, the PEC will, if you apply with the Public Education Commission, and if they have any questions or concerns, they will indicate that in a letter to the applicants. And then they will send another letter in July 28th. And then August 1st is when the Charter Schools Division provides their analysis of the whole application, the peer review analysis, and the charter schools analysis that will be given to the Public Education Commission and to you, the schools. And then the PEC makes their decision at their August meeting, which this year will be August 22nd. And then if you're approved in August, then you enter your implementation year. Those trainings also are held on Mondays. They'll begin in September. There's one a month for 7 to 8 months, depending on the needs of the applicants. So the PEC makes their final decision to deny, approve, or approve with conditions the application. And they do read and evaluate all of the applications that are received. They also look at what the peer reviewers say and what the Charter Schools Division say. So they make their decision based on, but not limited to, your application, like I said, the peer review team analysis, the capacity interview of the team, the community input hearing, any clarifying information or statements provided by the announced deadlines, and the applicant's statements at PEC meetings. Does anybody have any questions about? Okay. So if, it's just a little brief overview of kind of the history of charter schools in New Mexico and the intent. They do, as Director Chavez said, have the opportunity to either authorize with your district that you're going to be physically located in, or with the state. You receive a contract or a charter that you enter into, and you are promising to provide what your contract or your charter says over a term. Typical term in New Mexico is a 5-year term, although you can be given less than a 5-year charter contract. The contract is what enables you to be open and receive public funds. Students attend public schools by choice. So it can be difficult to get parents to make a change. So you want to be making sure that you're doing lots of outreach and letting people know about your potential school. And charter schools are public schools, but they are subject to greater accountability. They have regular visits, site visits. They have, like I said, a contract that has to be adhered to. The performance frameworks have to be adhered to, and you are rated on how well you are doing the tasks in the performance framework every year of your contract. And then that is reported on to your authorizer at your renewal time period year. And so it's a rigorous system, not just a hard lift to get it open, but then there's keeping it open as well. So again, they are public schools. I would like you all to get in the habit of referring to traditional public schools and charter public schools. There's confusion, historical confusion about charter schools and what they are. They are public schools. You have to follow all the laws that the traditional public schools have to, and you have more oversight than traditional public schools. So please get into that habit. You have to meet those same academic standards. Teachers are subject to the same certifications. You do have more flexibility than traditional public schools. You enroll students through an unbiased lottery system. Like I said, you have to be reauthorized every 5 years, and you can have your charter revoked for not serving the needs of your students. If you're not already familiar with the alphabet soup that is public education, strap in because you're going to learn a lot of acronyms in the public education world. So what you're going to start hearing a lot of from me is PEC, which means the Public Education Commission. They are 10 elected officials from representing all parts of our state. They serve for staggered 4-year terms, and they have no term limits. They live in the district in which they represent, which means that some of our commissioners don't have any charter schools in their districts currently. And they are the authorizer for all of these state authorized schools. So those are the PEC schools is how we refer to those. And then CSD stands for the Charter Schools Division. We provide support staff to the Public Education Commission, but we also support all charter schools regardless of their authorizer in the state with technical assistance and training opportunities. And then there's the Public Education Department, or the PED. They have 4 major roles: regulation, operation, administration of special services, and leadership of the state programs. So the Charter Schools Division is a component of the Public Education Department, and we work with all the different bureaus to liaise to make sure that the charter schools are all in compliance with all of those requirements. So I have another slide here covering their roles as a kind of a cheat sheet for you if you need to review back to it. But the authorizer is the PEC. They approve the new applications for state authorized schools. If you are going to be submitting an application with the district in which you're located, the public school district in which you're located, like Albuquerque Public Schools, you would be submitting to APS. The authorizer can also revoke a charter. They negotiate the contracts, they develop policies and procedures, and they monitor their schools through the Charter Schools Division. Again, we provide support staff and monitor schools through site visits and technical assistance when we're asked, and things like that. We make recommendations regarding approval, denials, and suspension or revocation of charters to the state authorizer. The PED can hear appeals of the PEC and district authorizer decisions on revocation or non-renewal. But we have all sorts of bureaus that you'll be interacting with if you get approved: school budget, safe and healthy schools, special education, identity, equity, and transformation, Indian education, assessment, accountability. There's a myriad. So I think it's important to remember that what the Charter School Act is standing for. And it's to enable individuals such as yourselves to propose and develop schools that have innovative curriculum and innovative teaching methods that rely on researched effective practices and that have been replicated, or that you're replicating successfully from other entities. So it's also important to remember, though, that all of it needs to be measured. So a lot of what you're trying to offer to your community is lovely, and some of it can be esoteric, but you also have to think about, how is this measured? How is it measurable? And because that's what is going to, that's where the more you know, the more oversight comes in. It's that we measure how well you're doing your mission. We measure how well you're performing academically, and you're held accountable to it. So you do have to address the needs of all students. You would be bringing in kids through a lottery system, so you can't, have limiters to who can attend your school. One of the main points of this, and it's critical in our state, is that we're improving student achievement. And so again, that comes back to those measurements, and we need to be able to measure and see evidence of improved student academic outcomes. We want parents to be more engaged and involved in education. And so there's lots of opportunities for parent and community involvement in charter schools. You develop your own site-based budgeting. And again, you're held accountable every day, all day, accountability. So as Director Chavez said, we really want well-developed applications from capable founding teams. Some of you have very robust teams, which is excellent. This is a very, very difficult process to go through when you're having to work a regular job and you're doing it by yourself or with only a small team. So thinking about how you can structure your time and maybe bring in other team members to engage with you throughout this process is helpful. And again, so these trainings aren't required of you. We don't take attendance. The implementation year trainings are and must be attended. So again, thinking about if you are somebody who is working in a regular job and will be working in a regular job through the implementation year, that you have Mondays available in each month starting in September. To do everything that you are going to be submitting for your application has to be on the templates provided if you're applying with the state that are provided by the Public Education Commission. So that includes the application, it includes the required appendices, and it requires the approved 910B5 form for budgeting and the 5-year budget report, which will be provided to you all. Okay, so as you embark, have clear understanding of you and your team's roles and who's going to be able to do what aspects of this application. Be sure you are clear on what you are promising to deliver, and that you're going to clear on how you're going to measure and provide that data. start getting comfortable with reading and understanding financial statements if you're not already. Be committed to and plan for how you're going to safeguard your proposed school and its assets. Have a commitment to ensure that your proposed school will report accurately and regularly on its activities. And the courage to develop your proposed school to outlive the founding team. I know that this is a huge commitment, and you all have put in a great deal of thought and time already. You want this endeavor to outlive you and outlive anybody on the founding team. And I think that thinking with that type of mindset will help in writing an application that has longevity. In your application, you'll be expected to show your team's capacity to meet each element of the Charter Schools Act. So thinking about how your proposed school will improve student achievement, engage in a robust and meaningful way with your community, be accountable for maintaining educational standards, maintain accountability for all the fiscal requirements, be equitable, culturally and linguistically responsive, which of course, I think, hearing a lot of you talk about your proposed schools, that sounds like it's high up on your list of things you're trying to achieve. And then how do you ensure high quality teachers come and work for you? So that's another, conundrum across the country. You'll have a governance council. So they have local control of the finances. There are differences between how traditional district schools, so like the APS authorized charter schools and state authorized charter schools are required to oversee their finances. That being that if you're state authorized, your school board is certified as a board of finance. And currently the district authorized schools do not be certified, they're not certified as a board of finance. The public school district is the board of finance, but otherwise understanding finances is very key. The head administrator and the governing board work together as partners. The head administrator is the employee of the board. That's one of the biggest areas of confusion when a founding team becomes a governing team, is remembering that they are the boss of the head administrator. And some of you already have a head administrator in line. Some of you are the proposed school's head administrator. Understanding how a board is functioned to be part of your support team. You are accountable to them, but they also are support. And so they have a role and you have a role, and head administrators should not be doing the work of the governance council, and getting comfortable with that and understanding their role, I think, is really critical. You have, when you become authorized as a public charter school in the state of New Mexico, the board is the fiduciary oversight of the school. You do have that responsibility, and you need to remember that you are answerable to the owners of the school, and the owners of the school are the taxpayers of the state of New Mexico. So we're all the owners of the school, and really remembering that you are beholden to the taxpayers to provide quality educational opportunity for our kids. And I think that's another place where the board can really play a strong role, is in ensuring the finances are where they need to be, so that the head administrator can really deliver the vision of this founding team on this application. So I've already covered this, but I keep it in here for you to be able to review, because again, I know it's a lot of information and so. So when I first started back in 2017, I kept hearing, you know, there was all this autonomy. Charter schools have autonomy, and you do. But when I thought of autonomy before, I thought of it, you know, it's the right or condition of self-government. I have control over my choices. I'm independent. That's not quite what it is in charter schools. So I like to tell people who are going down this path that you're choosing to go down, that really the biggest place where you have a lot of autonomy is to fail. You're not going to have a big traditional district office that will ensure that you don't fail. It's up to you. And so again, that's where that board and head administrator and business manager workload, and making sure that everybody's taking their different work areas and making sure that they are being done appropriately, is what's going to help make sure that you don't fail. You know, you have autonomy as long as you're doing everything that's required of you of running a public charter school. So another thing I think that's really important to think about as you're responding to the application prompts is, you know, what does it look like? How will it be measured? How will we monitor it? How will we understand that we have achieved what we're setting out to achieve? Not just at my level, the founder's level, but at the level of an individual family coming. What does it look like to the legislature or the governor? Am I improving academic situation, or do I appear to not be moving the dial? What about how I'm perceived by the public education department and all the different bureaus there? Am I in compliance with requirements, or am I out of compliance? What about your teachers? What are they experiencing? How does your authorizer view your school? What about the wider community, not just the community of families, but the community of businesses and you know, neighbors? The governance, what's their experience, and how are they going to be measuring and monitoring and reporting? And the citizens of New Mexico. One thing to keep in mind, you probably all know, you know, how to do a SMART process when you're writing things, but we're also asking you to thinking about it from a results-based accountability. So, you know, imagine that you are you know, you've been approved and you're in the middle of your first year's contract and you're getting ready for your renewal. You want to be able to speak about how much did we do, how well did we do it, who's better off for it. I think it's best to think about reporting out like this as a head administrator to your board every year. And that way you've done the report for each year, and you have that history that you can look back on when you're doing a renewal application. And I will often refer to your first renewal. If you get approved and through this process, not only is this a big process and a lot of effort, but you know, renewal starts really on the day one of your first contract, and every contract after that. It needs to be in the forefront of your head. You need to understand where you are and where you want to get to. One of the big hurdles is the cost. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time and effort. And it can, you know, take, and I'm not sure about this, I just was doing research, and this was the number that I could kind of find that was the most realistic, that it, you know, takes, it can cost upwards of $350,000 to get a charter school up off the ground, just to, you know, your first day. So there is the opportunity to apply for the CSP grant to get money during your implementation year, should you be approved. But there won't be a grant for, you know, every applicant school potentially. And again, we'll hear more about that next month in February. But for charter schools who have opened up without having any kind of grant money, you know, you wouldn't see money until the 1st of July, 2026 for this cohort if you apply this year. Uniqueness is key to a successful charter school as well. So really thinking about how your different approach is unique and based in innovative, reliable research. So again, a lot of yours sound like they've got uniqueness and equity really highlighted. I don't think anybody's doing a replication of a charter school model, but that is one of the options, and it's spoken about in the application itself. So I wanted to address that. So it's basically if there was an existing charter school and you know, you wanted to open up another school following that exact model, but in a different location. All right, so that's the end of that chapter. I'd like to take a quick bio break for everybody so that you can have a little bit of we've been going for almost an hour. So I have 9:52, so we'll come back at 10 o'clock, okay? So I'm going to go on and talk about the application packet and the rubric a bit. I can find, there we go. So the application is very comprehensive and there's lots of instructions. Part A is all instruction. What you're going to be turning into us through Epicenter is going to be parts B, C, D. The appendices. So you have the application is on the website and you can be uploading it and reviewing all of the instructions and the prompts and everything. The target audience that you're trying to reach with your application is both the intended authorizer and the peer review team that need to be able to give their opinion. They're independent reviewers. And so I think you need to remember, you know, you need to be making it easily understood, comprehensive. You know, don't make people hunt and search for your response to the prompts in the application. So like I said, there's 4 main parts. The first one being, well, you can see that I've got slides for that, so I won't do that again. all parts of the kit comply with the amended Charter Schools Act, which requires that your performance be measured according to the frameworks in a specific area. So again, Part A has got the introduction, instructions, the evaluation rubric. So it's really something you want to be looking at to see what the rubric is for each indicator response. Part B is your executive summary. This is going to be reviewed by the peer reviewers, but it's not rated by the peer reviewers. It's really your opportunity to speak about the driving force that you and your team have for proposing this school. Part C is the bulk of the written response that Part A rubric is telling you about. You want to think of it along the lines of making it easy for people to understand what your response is to the application prompt in particular. But it's also part of an overall story of what your school is going to be. So, making sure that you're maintaining that story throughout your application. Peer reviewers and Charter Schools Division staff and the Public Education Commission look for consistent narrative that's giving a thorough, thoughtful plan, a capable team that's going to be able to be entrusted with the millions of taxpayer dollars that it's going to take to make your school successful. Your proposed mission should be reflected throughout your application, the mission and the vision. And it is important to know that simply following all of the prompts does not guarantee that you will be approved by the Public Education Commission. Part D, so I lied, there wasn't a Part E. I think of the appendices kind of as Part E. Part D of the application is the capacity interview. So in June, probably the third week of June, we will be scheduling capacity interview meetings. They will be scheduled for they should be at least 2 to 2.5 hours of your time, and everybody on your team to be asked questions by the independent peer review team, and then they will also be rating you on your responses to those questions.
Will
Then there's
those interviews,
yes, pardon?
sorry, will those interviews be in person or over Zoom?
They will be over Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. And then the appendices, I need to fix this again. We took out the governing body bylaws. So we want to wait until you are approved to enter your implementation year to focus on your bylaws. So I'll fix that, and I will both talk about it at our next meeting and email it to you once I fixed it. So the rubric, you'll be rated as either meeting the requirement, approaching the requirement, or not meeting the requirement. In order to meet the criteria, you need to have all the required elements present, sufficient detail enabling the proposal to be implemented without requiring further proposal development. And so that's really important to understand that you will get feedback from the peer reviewers on the application and on each of the indicators, but you don't have the opportunity to incorporate that into the application. You can certainly incorporate suggestions during your implementation year if you're approved, but what you turn in June as an application does not, you don't get to edit that. So be really thinking you know, about, again, I think that it's really helpful mindset to think about writing the application as if you had to hand it over to somebody else to do and run, and you weren't going to be able to run it yourself as a founder, and nobody on your team was going to be able to run it. So you're writing it really from a standpoint of like, somebody came and took this box off the shelf, they'd be able to construct it using these instructions that we have and do something. So your proposal is reasonable and realistic. That's something that people look at throughout, you know, reading through your application. The peer reviewers are really looking to see, is it reasonable and realistic? Is it fully consistent throughout the application, including your budget and your mission? Is it fully consistent with all the requirements of the law? And is it coherent, easily understood? Kaya?
Hi, yeah, thank you. My question is about the responses. So it's my understanding, just based on what I read, is that we have our application, we submit that, and then there is a response period. So those responses don't become then amendments to the application, but will be part of like the hearing process later?
Correct. So it is part of the hearing process. So yes, you do have an opportunity to respond, but not change your application, if that makes sense. You know, your response could be, you know, we didn't think about that aspect, and we like what the peer reviewers said, we would incorporate that if we're approved. Or you can say, well, we feel like we've addressed that in this portion of the application very clearly, you know, end of sentence. But so yeah, that's a good question. So the approaches, the criteria, you know, most of the required elements are present, not all. It's insufficient detail, or further proposal development is required. There's minor inconsistencies with other sections. So like a minor inconsistency could be, well, that might be a major inconsistency. You know, I was going to say like that you're proposing having tutoring and then you leave tutoring out of your budget, but that would be fairly big. So anyway, I can't think of one off the top of my head. I'm sorry. Another thing that can make you approach a criteria is that there are questions raised about legal compliance, but it doesn't demonstrate non-compliance. Then just, you know, the independent peer reviewers think that there's questions arising about the reasonableness or viability of the proposal. And then something rated as does not meet, as none or less than a majority of the required elements present. They feel there are contradictions or substantial inconsistencies with other sections. There's insufficient detail to understand the proposal. This can include copying responses from a prior applicant's application, copying statutory, regulatory, and policy guidance language. So you don't want to just look at statute, regulations, policy guidance, and cut and paste. You want to make sure that it is through your lens of what you're providing. And then the copying responses from a prior applicant's application, we will be running all the applications through an AI check to make sure that it isn't, there aren't substantial sections that are copy and pasted from other applications. You should and can run your responses through an AI check as well. And so thinking about how you're going to do that and when you're going to do that. You know, if something is include statements that violate or conflict with the requirements of law. Like say you were gonna say that our school is going to be a single sex school, only for a girls' school. That would not be allowed in the state of New Mexico. That the application is incoherent or confusing, or it is patently unreasonable and unrealistic. Any questions about that? Next, we're going to talk about the frameworks. So we talk about the performance framework, but within the performance framework, there are 3 additional frameworks. But it is required that public chartering authorities establish a framework that clearly sets their expectations for you regarding academic, operations, and financial. So you need to be thinking about all aspects of your school, how the academic framework, the organizational framework, the financial framework, all are involved in the monitoring of your program. So the Public Education Commission's framework is their primary tool for monitoring and accountability. It has transparent criteria that the PEC through the Charter Schools Division use to consider to make their decisions based on whether or not to authorize you, whether or not to renew a school. So the goal of the performance frameworks, they really are a tool for both the school and the authorizer. You should not charter with an authorizer that does not give you clear guidance of what their expectation of you is and how you're going to be evaluated. So for those of you who are teachers, thinking about what you expect out of your children, right? Just you say this is the curriculum, what we're going to be covering, and this is what you're going to be assessed on to see that you've understood the curriculum, right? It's a similar thing. So, but the authorizer also sees it as from a standpoint of being able to show you where you seem strong and where you seem less strong or weak. Where do you need support, right? And a lot of times over the years, schools have kind of felt like, particularly around the academic framework, it wasn't an appropriate reflection of what they felt like their students had achieved. But you have to remember and understand, like we are looking at these windows, right? Like a test is a window, a site visit is a window, and you need to make sure with the board's support that your school's in compliance year round, and that those check-in points where you're being monitored really reflect that. We expect our schools to be focused on continuous improvement. Even our highest achieving schools really should be focused on how can they continually improve their processes and continually improve their outcomes. We like to identify and celebrate promising practices and programs, and provide the commission with individual schools with data and stories that help communicate a meaningful and positive narrative about New Mexican students, communities, and schools. An example of that type of thing was from the round of schools that were renewed in December of 2024, in which a number of schools had come to their renewal hearing with evidence about their work that they'd done around improving their math performance. And, that type of information, the commissioners then like to share with all the other schools. And, we like to highlight at our annual Charter Schools Conference. So, really, you're asking to become part of large community in New Mexico, and we all, you know, want to support and raise each other up. Kaya.
Hey, thanks. Yes, this might be a little bit down into the weeds. But my question is, as an outdoor school, we know that there's a lot of robust evidence about a causal relationship between improved student achievement and improved learner outcomes and being in a natural environment. However, I know that many of the measures that we use and rely on to measure achievement or places that need support aren't necessarily in alignment with outdoor learning, i.e. iStation, right? So my question is there also some openness and support around how we create our measures that are valid and robust and all of that? But I guess on one hand, yes, we are very unique. On the other hand, yes, we are part of a broader community that has much of its measures based on sort of automated standards-based testing, like I6 testing. So is there some openness around that, around providing different kinds of, well, I don't want to say different kinds of data, but providing that's the same data with measures that are more in alignment with our uniqueness?
So yes, and that's a great question. If you determine that you want to charter with the state, the Public Education Commission, we have two mechanisms in which that fall into your academic performance framework. And one of those is how you're assessed with the academics. And there's three options. The first option is the statewide assessment that all schools take and that your students will take no matter what option you choose on the academic framework. So there's just, you know, we're going to be assessed by that. Option two is our students are going to take the statewide assessment. The authorizer is going to look at the statewide assessment results, and the school is going to do an interim assessment, whether that's iStation or NWEA, something that is a normed, you know, assessment that has business rules. It can also be, there could be other types of assessment that I haven't, it's not just iStation and NWEA. There might be one that's specific to outdoor learning, expeditionary learning type of assessment too. And you would propose that so that you're, and I don't want to get too much into the weeds of how it works, but basically if your students, if you chose option two of the academic framework and your students met the standard with the statewide assessment, you don't need to do anything. But if you're working to meet or you didn't meet, you would take that then as the supplementary interim assessment data, and it could be used to move you from a working to meet to a meets, or from a does not meet to a working to meet, if the data is showing, you know, that the kids have growth and proficiency. The other thing that is measured is your mission. And so, you know, schools that have an outdoor learning goal propose how that metric will be measured. The mission goals have to cover every student. In the past, it used to be that you could do a mission goal for just a single grade, but you do a mission goal for the entire school. And so like looking at your K-5 proposed school, you know, you might have some type of goal around that outdoor learning experience. But that would, maybe it's measured differently for your kindergartners as it is for your 5th graders. And then that data is looked at as well as part of the academic framework. So did that help a little bit? I will go into more detail in the future.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that helped a lot.
Okay. So the objectives of the overall performance framework, and it is going to be a material term of your current contract. The authorizer wants to see student academic performance, student academic growth, achievement gaps in both proficiency and growth between subgroups, attendance, recurrent enrollment from year to year, financial performance and sustainability, your governing body performance, including compliance with all applicable laws, rules, and terms of your charter contract. And if you have a high school, post-secondary readiness and graduation rate. See, there's something in the chat. I noticed the link to the 2025 application states 2024. Yeah, there are no. We're trying to get away from approving the application having the commission approve the application every year, Becky. So that's why that is. All right. So the goal is to be able to have a rigorous measure. You know, it was frustrating to me when we got rid of the ADAF letter grade, because I think that overall statewide, we were starting to see charter schools outperforming traditional public schools. And then that switch happened. But, you know, looking at how we can really provide evidence of the you know, the efficacy of a charter school and the charter school sector, that our kids are performing, outperforming the state level is really where we're trying to get. So annual performance targets are set by the chartering authority in consultation with you. That's the academic framework, looking at what your choice is going to be on the framework, whether you're going to choose academic framework number 1, number 2, or number 3. I didn't talk about number 3 yet. So number 1 is the statewide assessment. Number 2 is the statewide assessment plus the interim assessment that you select. Option 3 is your kids have to take the statewide assessment, but the authorizer doesn't look at that, and you propose assessments that replace the statewide assessment. So there has to be an assessment for reading growth and proficiency, math growth and proficiency, science growth and proficiency, and all the other assessments that are done. Okay, lost my cursor again. There we go. The data needs to be looked at not just for the overall of your school, but also at the subgroup level, or disaggregated out by the different student subgroups. We're looking at gender, race, poverty status, special education or gifted status, English language learner, and the chartering authority shall collect, analyze, and report all that data from the statewide assessment tests in accordance with the performance framework. And again, so depending on which option you choose. So I think I go into that here. So again, the academic framework, the statewide academic framework does embed choice for each school. That's encapsulated a little bit here on the left with 1A, 1B, 1C. No, I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself. 1A is the statewide accountability systems. 1B is the outcomes for special student groups, and 1C is the participation rate. So 1A then has 1A, I can't remember how it do it, 1A1, 1A2, 1A3. We're looking at when you choose option 2, you're not just doing it for the overall students, you're doing it for student groups. Same with option 3. Participation rate is important. That's a federal requirement that a certain percentage of your students take the statewide assessment. And then there's the school-specific mission goal and the educational program that you intend to implement. So like if you're proposing Montessori, like one of you are proposing Montessori, your approach to Montessori might not be strictly AMI or AMS certified approach to Montessori. There might be some type of modification. And so your educational program and how you're implementing it is your opportunity to say, this is our pedagogy at our school. Our intention is to have, do it. This is how you'll see it at our school. We're a traditional Montessori, except we also incorporate this, or we have single grade level for grade 5, something like that. So, it's a description of how your educational program is implemented. And then there's a conducive learning culture survey that is put out, and all of that culminates in your academic framework. I can't speak for all authorizers, but I know that the state authorizer really considers improving academic outcomes for our students is the priority. Really wanting to get at, what is it that's causing students to not succeed, and how are you going to be moving that dial for the kids that attend your school? So I'm not going to go into this in great detail now, but just giving you a bit of an overview, because there is a specific reporting template that you will use for mission goal reporting. So again, this is something that has to be measured. You'll have to tell us, what does it mean for students to be successful? What does it, what percentage of kids have to achieve something in order to meet the goal, to exceed the goal? The next framework is the organizational framework. In the organizational framework, we're looking at the governing body membership. There's a minimum number of board members that's required in our state, which is 5. They have training that has to be completed annually. And they have to have transparent meetings that are run appropriately. All the paperwork has to be, the agendas, the minutes, the recordings of the meetings, all of those documentations. So we're looking at that. We're looking at your equitable enrollment processes, that your lottery is non-discriminatory, and that your enrollment processes are also non-discriminatory. And then we're looking at compliance with legal requirements. Last but not least is the financial framework. That is looking at the overall financial health of your school. We look at a variety of things, including days cash on hand, annual financial audit, financial reporting and compliance, fiscal oversight, and enrollment variance. And enrollment variance means, you know, you say you're going to have, you know, 200 students in your first year. Well, and this is every year. So we're gonna have 200 students at our school next year, and you have 100 students. That's a huge enrollment variance, right? So you want to have a small enrollment variance. There are annual performance reviews. There's things that the schools submit throughout the year to the authorizer, to the charter schools division, to the school budget bureau, to special ed, to, you know, assessment. There's lots of different bureaus that want to pound at your flesh. They want to know what you're doing. They're looking throughout the year. You might have grants, things like that. So there's all sorts of submissions that are required throughout the year. Again, if you're choosing state authorization, you will have charter school department visits annually. If you're being district authorized, you should also get an annual site visit. And it's definitely something you want to ensure, because you want to have enough, you want to know where you're performing well and where you're not performing well, so that you can fix the problems, so that you can continue to be renewed, right? You don't want an authorizer to just kind of like tell you at the end of 5 years, well, we're not going to renew you. So that's why it's really a tool for both sides of the aisle. So we have multiple types of site visits. We have annual site visits. We have new school site visits. So there were 3 schools that were approved to enter into their implementation year last year. Those schools are going through their implementation year this year. They will be approved or not approved for opening their doors at the June meeting. And then they would have a site visit 2 weeks before they open up to students this summer. And then there's also renewal school visits. So once you are authorized and you chugging along, you'll come to your 4th year of your contract, and you'll have a renewal application and a renewal site visit.
Missy,
yeah.
Can I just share right here?
Sure.
That although this presents the state authorized charter events, the annual visits are in statute. Missy's absolutely right. Like, you want to have those visits. You want to get that feedback. You don't want to wait till renewal to find out your stance or your status with your authorizer. But also, it's in statute that you should be getting annual visits, and that you do have to renew your charter. So the PEC with support from CSD is pretty, I'll just say it, advanced in terms of authorizing practices, but it doesn't go away if you go with a district that is less familiar with these processes. These things should be happening no matter who your authorizer is. So I just wanted to make sure that that was super clear to everybody on the call.
Yeah. And it's for you, right? It's for both sides, but you definitely want to have those to protect yourself. And so I want you all to, you know, be thinking about, what are we trying to and hoping to achieve with this school? That's really important to get that across. What specific outcomes are you anticipating, right? So, you know, kids go to school, and you're gonna work some magic sauce on them. You know, like what's your expectation of what that's gonna happen and how that's gonna improve their outcomes? What is the most important problem you're trying to solve for your community? You know, it sounded a bit like Collins Lake Outdoor School might be looking to lure a large portion of homeschool kids back into a more communal learning environment and opportunity. And Andalusia is looking to really, you know, get more understanding of the global impact that the world has on New Mexico then has also on the world type of thing. So, you know, what's this problem we're trying to solve? What does achievement of your goal look like, right? So really thinking about your mission, what you're trying to achieve, and what does that look like in a child that comes to us? You know, what are we going to see? And that thought process should be helpful to you when you're thinking about what your mission goal should be and how you can express that, how that will be measurable. How will you know when you've reached the goal? Everything that a charter school does, and teachers are amazing creatures. I have run a school, a private school, but I know that I would not be an effective teacher in a classroom of children. So teachers do an excellent job at the classroom level of getting kids to where they need to be. You need to be thinking about this as the whole school. And how do you know when you've reached the goals? How do you know, how will the board be told? How will the authorizer know that a child who maybe isn't proficient is growing, or the kids who are proficient, you're growing them even more? So really thinking about, how do we know when we've reached this goal, not just the goal of your mission, but the goal of opening up a school and offering this to your communities? What are you measuring? What are you focused on? I think that teachers have a tendency to try a lot of different things. But you know, as the proposed head administrators, the proposed board, you really need to be thinking about, we have to be mindful about how we're approaching it, make sure that we are monitoring it so we know what works, where our resources are being spent efficiently and where they're not. How will you know which actions have positive impact? So, you know, this is one of the things that it's harder for new schools to propose a mission goal because you haven't had students, you don't have data. So you're taking educated guesses on how successful your kids are going to be. You know, you want to be making positive impacts and have increased academic outcomes for your kids. So you have to think about, well, we have to be able to measure what we're doing to make sure that we're getting what we want. And where's your money coming from? You know, the CSP grant's going to be helpful. Again, you know, that's another application that you're going to have to do and earn. And if you don't, you should have a backup plan. All right. Wrap that up, just really be thinking about, you know, you've got in your head all these wonderful things you want to be able to provide. You can see it, you can taste it, you can feel it. You got to make sure that that is translatable to the authorizer, the community, your potential staff, your future governing board, making sure that they also understand and are on that journey with you. Okay, facilities. Facilities is the hardest hurdle any charter school faces. I have a quick history for you on New Mexico charters and their facilities. So 1993 is when our initial Charter Schools Act was put forth. Facilities were not addressed at that time. The act was reauthorized in 1999. Facilities were still not addressed at that time. In 2003, we got our statewide authorizer, the PEC. It was not designed to help its charter schools with facilities. Also in 2003, the Public School Facilities Authority, or PSFA, was created. And the Public School Capital Outlay Council, the PSCOC, which implements a standards-based program for capital outlay funding of facilities. Then in 2005, the Public School Capital Outlay Act was amended to authorize the PSCOC to use the Public School Capital Outlay Fund to create a lease assistance award program. At the same time, in section 22(8)B 4.2 of New Mexico statutes annotated of the Charter Schools Act was also enacted, commonly referred to as the Public Building Deadline. In 2007, the Lease Purchase Act was put forth. Also, the Public School Building Act was amended to authorize a per student distribution. Then in 2009, the Public School Capital Improvements Act was amended. 2015, the Public Building Extension and Removal of the cap on the amount that could be used from the PSCOC, it should be PSCOC fund, for lease assistance. So currently, and it might have gone, it tends to change every legislative session. So I don't know if it's going to change this section, but it's currently 815.6 per member. In fiscal year 19, lease assistance was covering approximately 66.2% of charter school costs. So even the lease assistance doesn't necessarily cover all of the costs. Steve.
So that 800 and something, that's I understand is that you can get some lease assistance per student. Is that for the number of students you have? So if you had 40 students times 816, you would be eligible for that much lease assistance.
Yes.
And the other question I've got.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. This seems such a basic question. I should know it, the answer, but the charter school, if you have one, what kind of entity is that? Because we've got a nonprofit out here right now. They own a lot of these facilities. I assume that the charter school would have to lease from them. But what is the charter school? It's not a nonprofit. It's not a.
You're a sub-governmental entity.
Okay.
The public education department. Yeah. So it is a little confusing. In other states, you would be a 501c3 not-for-profit. But in New Mexico, you are a sub-governmental entity.
And I assume that it is a nonprofit. We're not paying federal taxes on that. We've got to file reports with some governmental agency as far as our budgets and what money we've got coming in and going out. It's not a 990, but somewhat similar, I think.
So I don't believe that you do have any federal requirements around your budget. You don't pay taxes.
Well, so it's for staff related.
For staff related, you do pay federal taxes.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you're not a 501c3, okay? Yeah. And your neighbors in Colorado probably are a 501c3. So don't get confused if you end up talking to someone in Colorado. But as Missy said, you are a public school. As a charter school, right. You're a public school. And when I worked at a charter school, there is like this letter that says nonprofit public school. So like if you had to purchase something, you don't have to pay taxes, I believe. That exists. But in terms of your status, you're a government public charter school. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a bunch, and that's kind of what I've been hearing. But my mindset is always on 501c3, and I'm trying to figure out how does that fit in. The school is not part of our 501c3; it's its own separate entity. It has its own separate accounting and everything.
Right. And so you will have an EIN number, you'll have
Okay.
and TTCs, non-tax.
And TTCs, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember what the acronym stands for anymore. So yeah.
Yeah.
So all of the history there was to let you know that lease assistance was never intended by the legislature to be the primary source for charter school facility funding. It's a discretionary program. And other PSCOC programs have remained flat or decreased while charter lease assistant just continues to grow. You know, as a charter school, you won't be able to incur debt. A lot of charter schools do have a foundation that's a not-for-profit 501c3 in order to get a facility. So, you know, that's a pathway. It can be very difficult to get loans because of, you know, a loaner wants to make sure that you are going to be renewed, you're going to be authorized, that type of thing. So it's not an easy task. And that's not even then addressing what is there a facility available, right? So the act did envision that charter schools would be able to find space from the traditional public school districts. Some public school districts are more amenable to that than others. They often don't want to coordinate with charter schools regarding facilities, or if they do, they might be offering you a facility that they're not using anymore because it has a low weighted New Mexico Condition Index score. So another kind of annoyance is that there's not a statewide database that lists all the unused public buildings that are available in an area. So you'll need to part of the application with the facilities master's plan activity that you'll have to do and send into the public schools facility authority, PSFA. It's an activity for you to understand the process. It's not necessarily that you are right now finding your building for to potentially move into in July of 2026. But you should be getting a sense of what is available out there for you to find. So this is, even if you had a building, like we have our own building and we're gonna do this, that's great. You can do this activity with that building in mind. But we don't have PSFA come out and look at any of these buildings at this stage. We wait until your application would be approved. So this is really just an activity to familiarize yourselves with what is required for the building. As you know, you might find a property that hasn't been used as a school, and that can be fine as long as you have the funds to convert the school and you understand that you'll have to have the school rated for E or educational occupancy, which is a particular type of occupancy, ensuring that the school is appropriate for children. So this is in statute, and it's required at least 45 days prior to the application due date. So that always puts it at April 17th because the application is due June 1st. But again, this is only a test. It's an exercise to help you navigate that, and it's not a time to ask PSFA to come and look at properties. It's a very small department, and they just don't have the manpower. They do have a checklist, and this is, sorry, on this slide back here, a link to their website. Their website is even less intuitive than the public education departments. I think the public education departments is much better. PSFA's is, I have a hard time with it, and I'm there fairly often.
Missy,
Yes.
Julie has asked a couple of questions in the chat. Will CSP grant cover the costs associated with leasing a facility? Again, is it next time that this group meets the CSP?
Yes, next
will
time.
come present. So
Yeah.
you can ask about allowable purchases then, Julie. And then if our application for a CSP grant is not approved, will the state step in to provide necessary budget? No. At one point, the state had a fund to support new charters, but because we have a critical mass of charters right now, there's not been any funding put into that state account for new support for new charter schools. So the state does not provide any funding to you until you have a child that you're serving. So the first time this cohort would see funding would be July 1st, 2026. And then the final question is, for the 2025 application, is it correct that the funding, July 1st, 2026, exactly. So your funding will be based on projected enrollment, as Missy said, and you will also be evaluated as part of your annual evaluation, if you're with the PEC, on how close did you get to meeting your projected enrollment. That's the enrollment variance indicator in the performance framework that Missy has already covered.
Right.
Is there any follow-up questions to that?
Let me throw in.
Yeah, go ahead.
So even if the charter school leases facilities from somewhere else, can they also build their own facilities, maybe with foundation money or other sources?
It's a complex maze, and I don't know of any that open that way.
Probably wouldn't open
Solari,
that way, but I'm just thinking about, I
Potentially.
understand that there's potential for capital outlay funding because it is a governmental entity that the charter school might be able to receive. And it seemed like at the end, you might end up with a combination of some facilities that are leased as well as some facilities that the charter school itself has actually bought. Or that maybe you end up, if you need new facilities, that our nonprofit builds those and continues to lease, more facilities.
so in your first year, to open up a charter school, you're not going to get any
Right. I understand.
any lease money, any PSCSU building money.
Right.
There have been schools that built, well, at least they were proposing to build, and I think they opened up in an existing building as they were building their building. One of the things that we learned at that time was some cities, when you're building, some cities require you to do a traffic study plan. And this particular school did this in the Albuquerque area back, I think it was before the pandemic. And that cost about $30,000 to do the traffic study for the city. So if that's a path you're looking at, I would investigate with your city what the cost of a traffic study plan would be. So you can start saving.
Kai and I are smiling. I don't think that's much of an issue out
Well,
Mora.
not for you and Mora, but
Yeah.
but if you're in a bigger place. So
Steve, also next time this group meets, there will be a facilities
Right.
discussion.
Yeah.
A deeper dive on that.
Deeper dive on that. So I made up this table, hopefully to give you an example of some of our schools that have recently opened up with the state, and what the cost of their lease is, how many students they have, that's membership, is equals students, MEM equals membership, and what the difference is. So, you know, again, just to emphasize that the lease assistance money rarely covers the full amount of a lease.
This is really awesome, Missy. And if we look at this chart, we know that Thrive is renting from a former private school facility. Rio Gaffa, I'm not sure about what their facility situation is, but going down, let's see, ACES Technical shares a building with a private school. They get a portion of it. Things are kind of tight where they are. Solari is in the process, has built their own facility through foundation. That's the largest difference of the group. Raices is renting land and has brought in portables for their facility. And Explore Las Cruces is in two separate facilities now. If this is the same fiscal year as this one, I'm not sure.
No, this was last year.
Okay, so they might have been in just one of those. They're leasing like a facility that was at a strip mall. I'm not sure what it used to be.
So you're going to have to do research. Hopefully you've already started doing research. You'll need to look at statute and regulations. You'll have to look at policies, getting yourself familiar with an M1 source for statutes and regulations, the Public Education Department's website for all the different bureaus. One of the things that I've said over the years to new applicants is I think that if you are proposing a school, really thinking about how a special needs student and their family is going to navigate and experience your school, if you set it up thinking about those hardest to serve, you know, the easier to serve kids will be easily served. It's harder, I think, to think about, you know, your ideal student and then backtrack to the students that are going to be harder to serve because they've got a variety of needs. There's also guidance and technical manuals. Every single bureau in the Public Education Department has guidance and technical manuals that should and can be looked at. The PEC, the Public Education Commission, has a page on the website of the Public Education Department as well. You should be familiarizing yourself with that as well. That's what the applications are. If you're going to be choosing to authorize with a district authorizer, you should be familiarizing yourself with their website and materials as well. It's an uphill battle. It's not easy. It's not supposed to be. You're asking to be entrusted with the lives and futures of people's precious children. And so, you know, it's going to be tough. But more than that, the majority of schools, charter schools that close across the country, close because they've closed themselves. So they've closed typically for financial reasons. So really thinking about how the board can be that stopgap measure, that partner that's going to be monitoring and really ensuring that the business manager and the head administrator are doing what they are supposed to be doing, and in compliance. The board can function as like an internal authorizer, making sure that they're not just hearing good news all the time, but that they're really aware of the challenges and the weaknesses that need to be bolstered and monitored. So the top 4 reasons why charter schools fail or close include low enrollment, poor academic performance, financial malfeasance, and financial mismanagement. It doesn't have to be intentional. It can be accidental. And that's really, I think, where the board can play a huge role in making sure that they're that partner, freeing up the head administrator to really focus on the academics. So that's what I have for everybody today.
I have a few questions, if you don't mind.
Yes,
Yeah.
now it's question time.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So regarding like the governing body of the school, can the individuals on the board, can they be working other jobs? Like, you know, what I have on my team, the people who are helping with are actually working in other schools. And I don't know if, so of course, you know, they are involved in building the school. They believe in the idea. They want to help out in all capacities that they have. But some of them do want to give the promise that they will work in the school as staff or as principals or anything. Is that okay, like for somebody to be on the board of a charter school where they're maintaining the full-time job as a principal in another school or something? And the other question is, do people on the board, do they get paid? Should they be promised to get paid? And do they have to have an administrative licensure as well?
So they don't get paid. They cannot be paid. So they can't be employees of the school. Now, if you're talking about your founding board, and you've got people who are working in schools, they can be on your founding board. But if they want to ultimately transition to being a paid employee of the school, should you be approved, then they would be coming off the founding board and becoming, you know, so they could be on the founding board until the school basically opens, if that makes sense. You can have, so once your school is approved and open, board members need to be volunteer. They cannot be staff. They can work at other schools. So you could have a head administrator or a teacher from a different school that doesn't work at your school who's volunteering their time, and that's appropriate. But they can't, if they're going to transition to be the head administrator or a teacher or something like that, you know, they can be part of that founding team, but you really should be focused on finding people who won't be staff, that'll be volunteers that are willing to do this work. And that's where people are like, but we're just volunteers. So, you know, this is a serious commitment. I don't know of a lot of other volunteer jobs that are such a job. There's monthly meetings, there's subcommittee meetings, there's being in attendance at community input hearings during this process, there's being in attendance at board training annually for new members in their first year of board service. They have to complete 10 hours of training, and the continuing years in their next second and third and fourth and so on years of board service, they have to complete 5 years of training annually. So there's a commitment, and I often hear, but we're just volunteers. We've got full-time jobs. So it's critical to find people who are willing to put in the time that it's going to take to really ensure that the school is successful in the long run of the school. So
Missy, I have one thing to add and one question for you. So I believe, am I pronouncing your name correctly, Roddy?
Yes, correct.
that the only thing in statute about limitations on who can be on your board, there's two things. One, they shouldn't be on the board of another charter school, right? And two, they is it the head administrator or is it the board that couldn't have been involved in another school that closed for
The board.
financial
So
reasons?
if a board member served on a school that was closed for financial issues, then they can't serve on another charter school board.
So you'll want to check with them and then to see if they are currently on a charter board or if previously on a charter board, and if that charter no longer exists, why it closed. That you'll want to check with your prospective board members. And then my question for you, Missy, is, the Public Education Commission is also a public board, right?
Right.
That has to follow Open Meetings Act, et cetera, and it can't be employed, can't get payments, but we do stipend commissioners for attending meetings. And I think technically, potentially, a charter could, not that it would have the budget to do so, but is that your understanding, Missy? That they could get paid mileage and or some sort of like
They can,
whatever they can.
yeah, so I hadn't ever considered that as something they would do for just attending board meetings, but like if you're gonna say you're down in Las Cruces and your board members are going to be attending a conference, either the Charter Schools Conference or the Public Charter Schools of New Mexico Conference, and you're gonna send them up to the Albuquerque area and, put them up they're gonna be in a hotel. Those types of expenses can be reimbursed. There's lots of rules around them. You have to use the federal
Mileage rate.
and this is where you think about, like, how do we want a policy like that at our school to be written? I suggest that it's, it shouldn't you shouldn't just be getting receipts and expecting reimbursement to be made to teachers or board members, right? You should want a budget for those things and like know that this is going to happen, or that you've got the budget for it. So like thinking about how any kind of pre-approval for travel and reimbursement like that. A board member has to be unbiased. They have to be, and they shouldn't be receiving anything as a benefit of their board service. And that is something. Go ahead.
And even reimbursement for mileage, and say you did a very, very small stipend for a meeting, which maybe say $45 per meeting, which is allowable under the law, or that's the rate PEC gets if they attend online. How sustainable is that? If you have 5 board members times 45 times however many meetings per month, it adds up. And I guess I don't know of any existing charter schools, maybe Valerie or Missy or Ted know of any that do offer something like that. I would doubt it, and I would say it would be hard to sustain because typically budgets are very, very tight.
Yeah, I don't know of any.
So I'm a governing board member for New America here in Cruces.
Yeah.
And we actually, they purchase dinner for us, like every meeting. So that's, it's not the mileage piece, but that's a budget that they put into place so we can have meals. And like, for example, the conferences, they also pay for those.
Good to know. Thank you, Jessica.
Yes.
Shannon, when you were the superintendent in a district, did the school board members get stipended at all?
No, our board members don't get paid, but we do pay for their travel to their trainings, and we pay for their hotels and things like that.
And then Valerie wrote in chat that she hasn't heard of any. One more thing is Yano
Yeah. Shannon's asking about the military bases having a role in providing a building. I am not aware of any military bases providing a building for a charter school.
There is something in statute, however, that does ask that you try to be in a public building first, right? Like before you go find a landlord through a real estate agency that wants to make a profit on you as a tenant. You are supposed to be checking out whether there's a public facility available for you to be in. And a military base could be that public facility. So if you have one in your community and they have space, that could be a win-win.
And they want to work with you, yeah, could be a win-win. Roddy, did I answer all your questions?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Missy, could you give us more information about the foundations?
So you are allowed to have a foundation. It would be a not-for-profit 501c3. You are, so if you have a foundation, your school will be audited every year. And if you have a foundation, your foundation will be audited. Your school pays for both audits. And any audit findings of the foundation count against the school. So it is a component unit of your school. And so, you know, you might have great financial practices, but the foundation also has to, because a finding against the foundation basically tallies up for your school as your foundation, as your audit finding. There's not much else I can tell you about a foundation. I don't know if those are definites. Otherwise, there's not a lot of statute and rule around foundations in any way, shape, or form.
Where would I be able
Typically, people use them to get a building. So they will create a foundation that fundraises in order to get money to have a building.
And this is because a charter school is not allowed in New Mexico. Again, if you talk to neighbors in Colorado or elsewhere, they might have a different set of expectations, but a charter school in New Mexico is not allowed to go into debt for a facility, for example. And if a charter school participates in any sort of bonding, they have to coordinate with the local district to be included in any sort of taxing that the district puts out for voters to vote on. So you can't go into debt. A lot of people use foundations to be the entities that go into debt and then become the landlords to the charter school that helps pay off the mortgage for the facility. And you want to be careful because the foundation has its own board separate from your board. And there is a little bit of a who is holding who accountable for strong financial performance, because Missy's absolutely right. You could have a foundation that gets you into all kinds of trouble for bad financial behavior that will reflect on the charter, not necessarily the foundation, who, you know, we don't go do audits of charter schools division doesn't go look at operational practices of a foundation. The financial audit does take them into consideration, but it'll reflect on the charter itself, not necessarily the foundation. Julie's hand is up, and then is it Roddy that wants to speak after that?
Yeah, okay, thank you. This is one of the questions of Roddy, I think, that hasn't been answered. Like for the board members, do they have to have an education degree? Is there a
They do not.
requirement? Okay.
No.
And then when will we know if our application is approved or not? Is that after the capacity interview or?
That would be in, at the August PEC meeting, which is going to be on August 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
I was
Go ahead,
talking to a friend like a year ago about, you know, starting the charter school, and he mentioned that charter schools were not allowed to own their own building, and that was like a, I don't know if that's a misconception that he had or that's wrong information. Is that
That's wrong
accurate?
information. Yeah, they can own their own building.
Oh, okay.
They just can't take out a loan to purchase it.
Oh, okay.
So I have a question along those lines then. On that chart that you showed where some of the charter schools were in debt, did you just said they can't be in debt, but they were showing negative on that chart that you showed. So
But what that was showing was that so they're not in debt, but they have to use, and I'm gonna go over and explain to you how the state equalization guarantee money is meted out and all of those steps. They have to use SEG money. They have to use some of that money to pay the difference. So they have to find other ways of covering that difference in their budget. So
Shannon,
Lisa-
that red was the difference between what schools get in PSFA lease assistance payments and the amount that they owe for their lease. So, I mean, they can have a lease agreement and they have to pay that. So you know, it's not a loan. It's a monthly, or was that monthly or yearly?
I think it's yearly.
Okay, so the obligation. And so, yeah, they would pull from the SEG or another source of funds to be able to afford their lease agreement. Does that help?
yes, it does a little bit. So our charter right now has this is just the case that we have. The land that they are on was donated to them, but we built their building, the district built their building with bond money. So they would like to enter into a lease agreement with us. So that's not a debt. That's just back to just a lease agreement. Because they want to buy
Right,
the building.
and there could be a lease to purchase agreement,
That's what they
right?
want. They want a lease to purchase.
Yeah. So schools
Yeah.
can.
So that's not considered debt.
No, because if they were to close down, somebody's not gonna have to pay that off. It's still gonna belong to the district or whoever that entity is that you were referring to as we.
Okay.
I have another question related to that. So let's say a school is approved, like for the projected opening day, but then due to financial reasons, they were not ready to open. Can they delay it till next year, the following year, to like create a foundation to generate funds? Or do they have to really apply from the beginning? Let's say that scenario happens.
They can and they have, and it's frowned upon. And I would say if you don't think you're gonna have everything ready, then delay the submission of the application. That's better than delaying a year of opening. And the reason why I say that is because it will be obvious at the time that you submit your application how much capacity and readiness you all have to be able to charge forward on something. If you're feeling like, oh, there's still so many conversations and so many partners and so many things that I still need to do, then delay it a year before you submit your application.
Okay, thank you.
I've got another question that's that I was going to ask earlier when you were talking about the enrollment stuff. One of the things that we've looked at doing is we're going to try to start with K through 5. But particularly for our special needs kids and really for all of our students, there is no other option out here other than going back to the public schools. So we've, in our mind, we're thinking that it would be nice to be able to add another year to this of students every year so that the 5th graders, when they become 6th graders, they continue with the school. Is that something we can do with our original application? Would we have to go back every year to do that? How would we do something like that?
There's two ways to do that. So you can do that in your initial application. You could say that you're going to be a K to 12, but that you're going to start with, K through 5 and grow a grade level each year. Or you could, otherwise you would have to come back and amend your contract every year, which is a bit onerous. So most school applicants will say, ultimately we want to have the full grade span, and we want to have, an elementary, middle school, but we're going to roll out. We're going to start with, a few grades, and then we'll add a grade each year. We've had some schools that have done that and then got to a year where they're like, we're not ready to add that grade. And that's caused a bit of consternation for everybody, because it's not just between you and your authorizer, it's also between the public education department and all of the different bureaus. You need to know, like, how many schools have what grades and what students and things like that. So if you're going to roll out and want to have 6, 7, 8, I'd, an option would be to do it as part of this application, and then explaining, we want to start out opening these grades and then add a grade each year as our kids get older.
Yeah, that's real helpful. The only issue I have is that if you're, our hope is to go all through K through 12. But I know that when you start getting to the high school level, there's additional requirements. We might not be able to, in a position to really answer all those questions at this point. And we might want to delay having to.
Right. And so, and it's going to take your kids a while, right? So
yeah. You got 3 years to work on it.
You can then, when you're up for renewal, you would, at that point, you would say, and we call it an amendment because we don't have another term. You're not really amending a contract. You're starting a whole new contract, but you're letting your authorizer know that you're going to ask to add a high school. And at that time you would do paperwork and stuff like that, for
So
that.
it's like an amendment of the material terms of the charter. And so, yeah, Steve, I would think about, even if, say, for example, your long-term plans are to phase in a high school, but you don't think you'll do that in the first 5 years, then ask for what you think you can accomplish in the first 5 years. And do what you plan to do in the first 5 years, because there will be some time later on to continue to build up the school and phase in. Yeah, because you're absolutely right. The expectation would be that you have all the details associated with that high school, even if you don't see yourself doing that this first 5 years.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense.
Who else has questions? And there will be opportunities for you guys to bring questions throughout the, at every training. And then keep in mind that, so in the past, when somebody, like, if say Steve has a question for me and he thinks about it tomorrow and he emails me a question asking about facilities, any response that I'm going to give to Steve, I will send to all of you. So I'll make a group of this entire cohort of the email addresses that you gave me. So, like, I don't think I have Clarissa's email. Pretty sure I don't have Jessica's. So if you gave me an email address for your team members, of course, you can forward anything. Or you can also just give me the emails of the people you want to be included in these conversations. So, but if one of you thinks of a question, my response is going to be, everybody's probably got, needs to think of this question. And so I'll respond to everybody so that you guys can see what the answer is. Okay. So keep a lookout for that. If you have a super fiddly filter that's going to put it in the trash, you might want to check your trash. Yeah, Roddy.
I have a question again about like creating a foundation, because that's something we're thinking about actually. So you mentioned that the governing body or the management of the foundation has to be different from the Board of Education. So like I cannot create it myself then, right? I cannot just be.
Well, if you're creating the foundation, you're going to create that board, right? So you have to create the foundation, and there's paperwork to be classified as a not-for-profit. And you'll have to find people who will serve as the board, but like in this time right now, you could be on the board of the foundation. If your application gets approved to go into the implementation year and your intention is to be the head administrator of that school, you would then during that implementation year want to find other people who would be on the foundation board, not yourself, because the commission does not like school staff being on a foundation board. You can certainly have somebody on the school's board liaise on, like be the communicator to the other board, or even potentially serve on that board, maybe in a non-voting capacity. But you'll have to find other people to manage that. Yeah.
Okay, and for the foundation, does it have to be a nonprofit as well?
New Mexico doesn't allow for-profit public schools. So.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
The next meeting would be with Deputy Director Parker. Would that be the January 31st training?
Who's Deputy Director Parker?
Hi, Julie. It's me. It's Val. That training is just optional. It's on the side. It is not part of this charter school division training.
Okay.
And just so you're clear, Julie, Valerie works for Public Charter Schools New Mexico, PCSNM. They are a nonprofit organization that is an advocacy organization for charter schools. They did apply for the federal charter schools program grant, which is the source of funds that Valerie will be speaking about, and because the purpose of those funds are to support new and expanding charter schools. So as a new school, you would be eligible for applying for the grant. And they have, I think it's a competitive process. So she'll be able to provide all kinds of details about what that is.
Okay.
But
thank you.
Yeah, she's our partner, but she doesn't work for the state.
All right.
Deputy for another organization, not this. Thanks, Julie, for the question.
Thank you.
And there are no, just like you would tell a student, there are no dumb questions, right? This is a complex, many-headed dragon you're trying to slay here. So don't ever feel embarrassed by asking a question. And you are doing everybody else a favor by asking it, because everybody else is probably thinking it too. So if there aren't any other questions, I don't need to keep you all. I'm making the corrections to the slides that I found that were errors. And I will email it out to you all. So you'll have that kind of cohort email. And so if you don't see an email from me by tomorrow morning, please reach out, because I can't tell if you didn't get it right. I can tell if I've typed your email in wrong. It'll say, there's what the email address you're talking about. And I tend to do that. I'm a terrible typist. Yeah, just, shoot me an email in response. And thank you, Roddy. We try to make them helpful because again, it's a lot to navigate. And
Missy, could you tell me the date of the second one again? The one in February is when?
February 24th.
February
I had
24th.
every single date wrong on that slide except for the first one.
Oh, the other ones need changing too as
Yeah,
well?
so I'll read them off to you and I usually wait to send those out, but I think I'll send them out, all the links to those meetings now to you guys. Where's the slide? Here it is. So we'll meet on February 24th, March 24th, and April 28th.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. I will add that email address. Briggs. Where'd my chat go? All right, that was for. Ed, did you happen to see who that? Oh, here it is. Never mind. That was from Yano. Okay.
Sorry, I was talking with my mic muted. Yeah, Yano Staccato.
All right. Thanks a lot.